Okay, so I think we are back from the break, and we can start the next lecture. So let me share my screen. So is my screen visible to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So now we will take a look of the basic commands. So we divided this lecture into two parts. We will see some of the basic commands today, and then we will continue tomorrow with the rest of the lecture. And after that, you will be able to do the exercises for this part, right? So we have seen today many different commands from Git. So it could be overwhelming the first time you see several commands at the same time, right? So the first command that we will see today is the help command. So Git offers one functionality, which is the help. And then as an argument, you can type the name of the command you want to inspect. And another way to get the help is by using the man pages from Git. If they are available on your system, then you can type git dash and the name of the command, and you will see all the information that it's included in the man pages from Linux in this case. In the case of the git functionality, you see here that I want to inspect the commit command. So then I type a git help commit, and plenty of information will display for this particular command. So it starts with the description of the command. In this case, git commit records the changes to the repository. And as you can see, git commit accepts many options that can make this commit command potentially more powerful. For instance, you can see the -a option that Diana mentioned previously. And also you can combine that with other options like a -m, also shown in the previous presentation, and so on. And then below, you can see the description of all of these options, right? So you can combine the commands that you want with some additional options to make it more usable. So now, so imagine that we want to create a repository. There are several ways to do that. And here I'm showing you how to start from a brand new repository. Another way could be, for instance, that you already have some folder, some directory, where you already have subfolders or other common files, text files, for instance. and then you want to initialize that repository. But in this case, we will create a brand new repository. And for that, we create a folder called myproject, right? We use the mkdir command from Linux, then move to this folder, myproject, and type here the git init command. So this will create a folder called .git in the current directory, which will contain all the Git related files. And this is what we saw in the previous presentation. So the git init command will give you some extra information. But at this point, you don't know what is the status of the repository. So what you need to do, or at what point you are. So in order to do that, we can use the git status command. And if we type that on the repository, we will see the following information. So it says that we are now on the branch master, which is where the main project will be located. And it says there is an initial commit and nothing to commit. So we can add additional files that we will be creating with the git add command and so on. So in the previous setup, we started from a brand new directory. Another way to initialize a repository is by cloning it. So there are several ways also to clone a repository. One is by using an existing URL from a platform like GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, for instance. Or another way is by using a local repository that will be, for instance, in your local system. So that's why here the git clone command accepts as an argument the repository location. Yes, and this could be the path to the local folder. And here is a path where the repository will be located. So in the case that we decide to clone a repository from a URL address, then we can do that in the following way. We use the git clone command. And here I'm using the URL of a project called myfirstproject.git, right? And it has a HTTP PPS address. And here, as a second argument, I provide the git clone with the path where the repository will be located. In this case, it will be in the subfolder my project, which is located within the Git course and Alice parents directories. So upon doing that, you will see that Git clones gives you the information telling you the objects that it will be download it. And now that the repository is cloned, then you can move to the path where the repository is located, in this case, my project. And then you can also check the status, and it says on branch master. Notice here that the Git version that I was using here was a bit old, and in the latest versions, it is suggested to use the main name instead of the master. And it says also nothing to commit and working in directory clean, because we haven't added anything up to this point. So just clone the existing directory. So this picture will help you to understand what we have done up to now and illustrate the concepts of the working directory, the staging area or index, and also the repository, right? In the previous slide, I mentioned that we clone the repository, and basically what we clone is this part, right? So if you are collaborating with the people in your group or around the world, then you will provide them with this part, the repository. In the way that you decide, for instance, it could be GitLab, Bitbucket, GitHub, or even you can put your own server, yeah? And they will be working on this part here. So in your case, you will be working in the working directory, right? Here is where you will put your changes and do your modifications. So when you do your modifications, then you can use several commands that we have seen up to now. And it's important to mention that when you use the different Git commands, you will arrive at different parts of any of these three parts here. For instance, when we do a Git add that we mentioned before, you will arrive to the staging area, right? Now that you are here, you can issue the command git commit, and then you will arrive also to this part. Notice that the git commit also allows you to go from the Git working directory directly to the Git committed changes. And there are also other commands in red that allow you to see the differences in these three parts, right? So it's important to visualize where you are sitting, either in the working directory, the staging area, and the repository. So now we have initialized our repository either by running the git init command or by cloning it. So first, let's create a file as Diana did before. And for it, we are using the echo command. And this will add some content to a file called first.txt, right? And now we ask about the status of the repository. And then Git will tell us, so you are on the branch master, and there are some untracked files, right? And this is very interesting because Git is it's clever enough to suggest what are the possible next steps that you can follow, right? So, and also it's very instructive and useful. When you run Git status, it will tell you, well, you need to add or commit, or you are in the process of emerging that we will see later on, or you maybe will be uh, aborting a merge process and so on. So Git is clever enough to suggest what you can do, right? So in this case, it tells us there are some untracked files, which means that they are not part of the Git repository yet. And then you can use the git add on this file called first.txt. So then we can issue the command that git suggests, and we add the file git add first, and then we check again the status of the repository. So we see that the status has changed, and it says, well, there are some changes in your repository that can be committed. These are related to the file first.txt. You can either commit the changes or unstage, yes, unstage the changes. So if we return to what we said about these three parts or three stages of the files, what we did with the git add is that we put the changes on this area, right? So we are sitting here. And if you are not happy with the changes that you did to your file, then it's also possible to return to the working directory, right? The one at the left side. So in this case, Git suggests to use the git rm command, which is a abbreviation of remove, similar to the rm command in Linux. So if you want to unstate the changes, use the git rm minus minus cage and the name of the file. So it's also interesting to notice that Git will suggest this git direct command because this is a brand new repository, and nothing has been committed yet. You will see in a few slides more that this command changes when you have committed previously. So once the changes are staged, so you are in the middle part of the picture that I mentioned. So you are ready to commit. So the command for this is the git commit. So this will open a window, right? And depending on the default editor that you are using, So the screen that you will see will be different. In my case, because I'm using VIM as the default text editor, so my screen will look like this. And here I will be able to type a message, right? So, and this needs to be something um instructive for you and for your collaborators to notice the changes that you did up to this point. So in this case, the first.txt file is very simple, but imagine that you are writing some extensive code. I would say maybe Python, Fortran, C, or whatever language you're using. And then if you just write, well, I made some changes to the file first.txt. So when your collaborators look at this message, they won't get anything, right? So that's why there is a terminal like here where you can type a concise message so that you can remember what you did, and also that can help your collaborators to continue with the development of the code, right? And maintain the code. So you type the message. In my case, it's not instructive and not concise. It's just for purpose of teaching here. And I just wrote the first commit in my project. Then I save the file, and this procedure will depend on the text editor that you're using. And once you save the file, then your changes will be committed. So it means that the changes will be already sitting in the repository, which is in the right side of the picture that I showed you before. So also you will get some verbosity for a git commit. So it will tell you the commit hash. And also it says that one file was changed with one line only, right? And this tells you the mode that Git is using for tracking the file. And this in particular, this number 10064 means a standard regular file. And you will get something different if you use executables, for instance, or folders. That will be a difference. And then if we check the status of the repository, then we will see on the branch master, nothing to commit, and everything is clean, right? So if you see, there are some commands, in particular, git status, git commit, that you will discover that you need to type them very frequently. So there are some shortcuts that you can use. We will mention about this at the end of the lecture, but not today. And also there are some plugins for the terminal that you may be using, in particular for the Linux terminal. There are plugins so that they tell you where you are sitting in the Git repository. And also there are other plugins that will allow you to see what are the steps that could be followed. Yep. So this could help you in the workflow. So in case you don't want to type a long message and you don't want to open the text editor every time that you want to commit, so then you can use the command git commit -a-m, and this needs to be followed by a message, right? Not a long message, I would say, because otherwise you maybe uh, want to use the text editor. And here, a short message, and then it will be automatically add all the files that were modified and tracked, right? So which means that probably previously you have tracked the files, and this will be committed using this short message. So, okay, so we have added the file, committed the file. So now the file first.txt is being tracked by Git. So now imagine that you modify this file and stage it again with the git add command, right? So if you issue the git status command, the message that we will see is the following. So there are some changes to be committed. And if you remember, in order to unstage the changes before, we use the git rm command. But in this case, Git suggests a different command, which is git reset head and the name of the file, so that we can unstage it. And this is because now there is a head pointer that was not present in the previous case because the file was not tracked. So also in more recent versions of Git, you can use the command git restore -- stage and the file name. So there was a question today regarding this git restore, and for versions below 2.x, I would say, this command was not available. So that's why you cannot use it. So let me see what will be. So I think I will finish with this slide, and then we can continue tomorrow. So we have seen that adding files can be done with the git add command. But imagine that in our repository, we have um, plenty of files which have some structure in their names. Yeah. So as an example here, I show you only 3 files, called file1, file2, file3.txt, and we want to add them at the same time. So we can use the wildcards as we do in Linux. And here, for instance, with this command, with this symbol, the question mark, we say 0 or any number of characters. And here with the brackets 1 to 3, we say use the numbers from 1 to 3, right? And keep the structure of file.txt. And finally, use this for adding a 0 or any number of characters followed by .txt. So for this particular example, where in the repository have only these 3 files, then issuing these 3 commands will be the same, right? But it could be different if you have other files present in your repository. Okay, so I think we can stop here and we can then continue tomorrow with the rest of this lecture.